All right, so it's nearly September, school's coming up, you're going into year 12 or year 13. You've realized now that you're starting to panic a bit. You've got no idea what to do, basically, especially if you're going into year 13. You didn't do too well in year 12, and now you're kind of starting to shit yourself. In that case, you've come to the right place because this video is going to be the only one you'll ever need to get an A star in maths. And that's whether you're already getting A stars, in which case we're going to talk about how to make that process a lot smoother, a lot easier, a lot less demanding and more efficient. Or if you're currently at a D, a C, and you want to get to the point where you can comfortably get A's, A stars on every paper you do. Okay, so there's three big things you need to understand before we go any further here. And I'm going to go into more detail on each of them as the video goes along. The first is that everything you think you know about studying is completely wrong. The second is that maths is the easiest subject you can pick and get an A star in. And third is that everything your teachers have told you, or your tutors or other YouTube channels, is either painfully slow and inefficient, or just flat out won't get you the results that you want. Anyway, that's assuming that you want to get an A or an A star in maths or further maths. Look, if you want a super in-depth university level understanding of the concepts you're studying at A level, then this isn't the video for you. But I'm assuming that most of you are not looking for that. And realistically, you just want to get the highest grade possible. You might not even like maths. You don't even need to like maths to get an A star in it. Pretty easily too. All right, first things first, everything you know about studying is wrong. Why is everything you know about studying wrong? Well, there's two ways you could look at this. So there's two extremes, I would say. There's the kind of super nerd extreme with like scientific data, you know, dopamine retention graphs and all this nonsense. And then there's the other extreme of the kind of traditional school, for every X hours of study you do in class, you need to do Y hours by yourself. That side. Again, also very silly. Not a good way to measure your time. Okay, so what's the alternative? Somewhere in the middle here. And it's actually really simple. Okay, I'm gonna give you an analogy. Let's say you're starting to go to the gym, okay? On the one hand, you have the science-based lifters, you know, they measure everything out to the milligram, they time their sets, all this stuff, right? If you've been going to the gym, you know that most of this stuff is pretty pointless, right? It's gonna get you from 99% to 100%. It's not what you want, okay? If you're going from a D and you want to get to an A star, doing these little incremental steps is useless to you, okay? Just like if you're 50 kilos overweight and you do all these little things at the gym, you're not going to get the results you want. The other extreme is you go to the gym for 3 hours a day, let's say, and half of that time you spend doing cardio. You know, when you're trying to get jacked and you go and you do 60 minutes of cardio and then you do these kinds of stretches. And now any of you that actually go to the gym know that the best thing you can do, especially as a beginner, is to simply be consistent. Go consistently and do the exercises that directly link to your goals. That means if you want bigger arms, you do bicep curls. If you want to get better at integration questions, you do integration questions. You don't sit there in front of a textbook for half an hour to an hour reading theory so you can try and manipulate it in your mind and, you know, take it from this in here, the theory, to the question. No. Start with the question. Again, if you want a super in-depth understanding of university level mathematics and the concepts behind all the things that you're learning, then sure, sit with the textbook for hours on end. But if you just want to get maximum amount of marks on the question you're doing, do the question. Now, carrying on from this actually goes into my second point, that maths is the easiest A-level subject you can pick. Why? Well, because once you can do 10 integration questions, you can do any integration question they give you. There's really not that much variation between years. It's completely black and white. This means that, and there also is a huge amount of resources. I mean, people have been doing this for what, 20 years. So you can force the examiner to give you the marks simply by repetition and just doing things over and over and over again. Unlike, say, English, where you actually need to use your brain and do a real kind of analysis and you're judged on that. You know, you need to really understand the text and break it down. It's far more complicated here. As a mathematician, I can tell you, mathematics is, at least at A level, is super simple. You know, just learn the processes and rinse and repeat. There's nothing to it. There's no cognitive power that needs to be spent here. Now, I say this and I know what's going to happen because you lot are going to take it too far. And this is also linking to the third point I made, which is that your tutors, your teachers, and other YouTube channels all suck because they do exactly this. So what's taking it too far? Well, that's basically having a complete abundance of materials, like we said before. That's a good thing, but only if you know how to use them. If you go on other YouTube channels, for example, they'll have so many things. They'll have GCSE, A-level, they'll venture into physics, whatever. Let's say they stick to maths, they'll have lists upon lists, video upon video of random things that you don't even really need, okay? They'll spend just as much time, just as many videos on topics, for example, that are worth 10% of the marks compared to 60% of the marks. I look at that and I would say that simply doesn't make any sense in terms of a time and resource allocation, right? And the thing is, maths at A level with most exam boards, Edexcel, AQA, OCR, it's all structured like this, right? There's like 2 or 3 big topics that take up probably 60-70% of the marks. And then there's kind of these little fringe topics that like are worth a bunch of theory in the textbook or with a tutor or a teacher. And of course they have to go over it with you, but they'll spend just as much time going over those topics as they will big topics. So again, what's the alternative? Well, you need to figure out what the big topics are. You need to be laser focused in your studies. This doesn't mean doing 6 hours a day. This is where the A-star students right now, as I was saying before, this is where they fall because sure, they'll get A-stars, but it's complete overkill. It's like imagine you want to buy a pair of, I don't know, new shoes, and let's say you need to work 10 hours or whatever part-time job you do to afford those shoes. The A-star students, what they'll do is they'll work 30 hours to afford the shoes, and then they'll kind of say to you, well, yeah, but I can afford the shoes, right? I have the money, I can afford the shoes. And you'll say to them, yeah, you can afford the shoes, but you did it in 30 hours when you didn't need to, right? You could have done it in 10 hours. You chose to do it in 30. You didn't buy anything else. You just bought the shoes. You only ever wanted to buy the shoes. There's only one target here. You just want an A-star, right? You just want an A or an A-star. Like, there's no variation. You're just buying one pair of shoes. So why work 30 hours when you could do 10? So you as a student right now, you're in one of these two scenarios. You're either working 30 hours to buy shoes that cost 10 hours worth of time, or you're someone, a D student, for example, C/D student, you want to get to A-star, and you're doing maybe 2 hours and trying to afford something that's worth 10 hours. There is a middle ground here, and the problem is that the people that are doing 2 hours see everyone that's doing 30 hours and they're off put by that because they think it's too much commitment, basically. Too much. Like, I could get an A-star in maths, but it's gonna cost me my life, you know? Like, I don't want to be the have a picture in their mind. You all know what I'm talking about, right? When they think of someone who gets an A-star in maths, they, like the nerdy little Asian kid in the corner of the room. He has no life. He doesn't go out. He doesn't have friends. He just kind of sits there in the library all day writing. They don't want to be that, and that turns them off from getting to the 10 hours. Very achievable, very relaxed, actually. That's basically everything you need to know to get an A star or an A in maths. There you have it. Those are all the concepts you need to have in your mind going forward from this point on. If you're starting year 12 or especially year 13. Now the question becomes, how do we put that into practice? Wow, yes. I hear you, I hear it through the screen. Trust me, I can hear you say it. You've given me some nice tips there, but there's no actionable steps. Fine. Now, if you accept all the concepts I laid forth in this video, then there's actually just one actionable step that you need to take. Can you guess what it is? Yeah, just subscribe. It's as simple as that. I'm going to be posting daily breakdowns of laser-focused work on what you really need to do. This is going to include study tips and not super autistic level, you know, dopamine curve. No, okay. It's going to include practical, consistent study tips that if you follow them, you will go from a D to an A star. And if you're at an A star and it's costing you 30 hours when it should be costing you 10, it's going to get you to 10, okay? I'm not going to upload breakdowns of every conceptual topic under the sun because you don't need it. What I'm going to do is give you specific breakdowns of core topics and allocate time according to the importance of those topics so that I don't waste your time or my time. Super simple steps. It's really just as easy as that. You know what you need to do. Have a nice day.